Hello, my name is Jayati and I'll be presenting our work Why Johnny Can't Unsubscribe Barriers to Stopping Unwanted Email, done in collaboration with Dr. Emilee Rader and Dr. Patil. Have you always been overwhelmed by unwanted emails? According to a recent Radicati report, there were over 250 billion emails sent in 2018 alone, and we can only expect the numbers to go up. In fact, marketing emails are by far the largest share of consumer emails that people receive each day. According to the same report, of the 94 billion consumer emails received by users, 76 billion are not spam but legitimate marketing emails. The massive number of emails people receive each day not only causes information overload but also creates a network of personal information transaction that is increasingly hard to keep track of. And it is not that people do not try to manage their emails. They often leave unwanted institutional emails as unread or stash them in a different folder. People also delete them from their inbox. There are legislative measures as well. The Can-Spam Act of 2003 requires companies to provide consumers with a way to unsubscribe from emails that they do not want. However, it turns out that even so, people find it very difficult to go through the process of unsubscribing and are often unsuccessful. Our goal in this study was to understand why this was the case. We started with two basic research questions. First, what are people's experiences about unsubscribing as a process? And second, how do they manage boundaries to prevent unwanted emails from reaching them? We recruited study participants through flyers and classified posts. These flyers had a URL to a screening questionnaire, and participants who met the eligibility criteria were invited for a 45 to 60-minute study session. We interviewed about 18 participants between the ages of 22 and 64 who had been living in the United States all their lives. Since the study was conducted in a college town, 15 of our participants were students, though nearly equally split between undergraduate and graduate students with diverse majors. We had a three-part study design. First, we asked participants to save the emails that they would like to unsubscribe from before coming in for the study. This was to understand what are the different barriers there were to unsubscribing and what processes participants found particularly easy or hard. We then asked them to come in for the study session and asked them to think aloud while they unsubscribed from their emails. This was to understand the various mechanisms in which people unsubscribe from the different emails that they have. Finally, we interviewed them about their experience of unsubscribing, both past and current, to suggest recommendations for process improvement. From the corpus of 171 emails that our participants unsubscribed from, we found that there were 8 major mechanisms, as you can see. In increasing order of difficulty, 3 of these mechanisms were easy, 1 was moderately challenging, and 4 were very challenging for participants to unsubscribe from. For this presentation, I am describing 2 each from the easy and the difficult mechanisms respectively. The easiest was the one-click unsubscribe mechanism, where a user could click on the unsubscribe link and get directed to the confirmation page immediately without any additional steps. An example would be the following email, where if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the email and click on the unsubscribe link, it redirects you to a confirmation page. This page contains only a line or a few lines of unsubscription acknowledgement that the process was successful. The second of the easier mechanisms was the unsubscribe link with confirmation. When a user would click on the unsubscribe link given by the email service provider, it would show a pop-up verification to confirm. In the following example, the unsubscribe link is provided by the email service provider at the top of the email, which shows a pop-up when clicked to verify. This is followed by a confirmation that removes the unsubscribe link from the top of the email. Moving on to more challenging mechanisms, user would be led through the unsubscribe through login system, where if they click on the unsubscribe link, it would ask them to log in. This would usually be followed by a landing page to the subscription center for customizing the different mailing lists. The final step would be receiving a confirmation pop-up. In the following example of unsubscribe through login, when a user scrolls all the way to the bottom of the email and clicks on unsubscribe, it takes them to a separate login page, which sometimes involves multiple steps as you can see. Once this login process is successful, users are taken to the subscription center where they can customize the frequency, channel of communication, and the types of email that they receive. Reply to unsubscribe was the most challenging mechanism, not just because of the process, but also because sometimes participants had to reply to someone they knew on the mailing list they no longer wanted to be a part of. This process would require them to compose an email and send it to unsubscribe themselves from a particular mailing list. In the following example of reply to unsubscribe, the user needs to compose an email in reply to the email received from the mailing list and then hit send. This is sometimes followed by confirmation emails from the mailing list that they have unsubscribed from, indicating that the user has been successful. In order to understand participants' perceptions of these mechanisms better, we conducted a post-study interview immediately following the study session. Our interview protocol consisted of 29 semi-structured questions, 15 specific to the unsubscribing practices, 7 task-specific questions, and 7 questions about participants' internet behavior and feedback on the study session. We found that overall, the user experience of unsubscribing was poor. Participants had problem not only initiating the process, but also conveying the unsubscribe request and establishing a successful process. Lack of good email design with a distinct unsubscribe link made it very difficult, especially for users with limited visibility, to unsubscribe. Users also believed that they did not have sufficient control over what emails they received. This was majorly due to the fact that the subscription and unsubscription processes lacked appropriate feedback. Participants were left wondering if the process of unsubscribing worked, and if it did, why they still kept getting emails. Unclear feedback also had missing information on how long the process would take, and users had to wait for more emails for confirmation. Like participant 6 pointed out, this made them believe that the unsubscribe process would not work anyway. Users also hated emotional manipulation that attempted to disrupt boundaries between personal and customer connections. They wanted clear boundaries in customer-company relationships. As P4 mentions, she hated all these brands trying to be a friend. Consequently, they did not care about providing feedback and would prefer not to enter information into post-unsubscribing surveys. Institutional email that did not respect users' boundaries also caused them to question the legitimacy of these emails. Participants indicated that they did not want to click on some of the unsubscribe links because it was difficult to ascertain if they were phishing emails. Sometimes, mailing lists would send emails with a person's name on it, which participants, like P2 here, thought were clickbait. However, just because participants believed that companies were sharing or selling their information anyway did not mean that they did not desire firm boundaries. They wanted to be asked before being added to a mailing list. They wanted restrictions on how many emails they received, because too many meant that they did not even want to shop there anymore. Consequently, users looked for alternative ways to enforce these boundaries, leaving emails unread, deleting them constantly, and even marking illegitimate emails as spam were some of the ways in which people filtered large number of retail emails from reaching them. Thus, from our study, we found that there were too many mechanisms of unsubscribing that were convoluted, and this increased the cognitive load it had on users. Current mechanisms were inefficient as well, causing them to perceive a lack of control over their inbox. Nevertheless, users did want a way to establish boundaries from unwanted emails. Based on these three key takeaways, we put forward the following recommendations. First, a possible standardization in the process of unsubscribing. While it might be challenging to convert all the different mechanisms into a single one that users are most comfortable with, a few standard mechanisms that users do not have to learn every time would make the process much more user-friendly. It would also make it convenient for email service providers to automate the process of unsubscribing. Second, following good interface design principles in consumer-targeted emails would make it easier for users to unsubscribe should they choose to. This would mean providing proper feedback about the process, when it worked or not, increasing visibility of the email elements, and reducing the length of the process of unsubscribing. This would go a long way in reducing the learning curve that people have. Third, allowing users to set clear boundaries by stating expectations upfront. As some of our participants mentioned in the study before, they were often not asked for explicit consent before signing them up for a mailing list. They started receiving emails right after they purchased a product after being automatically signed up for it. They were also unsure about how often they would expect these emails. All of these made them feel that they did not have sufficient control over what they choose to share with companies. Finally, one of the recommendations that also came from our participants was having a way to mass unsubscribe from emails through email service providers. Just like how people could delete multiple emails, which was also a common alternative to unsubscribing, they wanted to be able to unsubscribe at large from the emails that they did not want. In summary, unsubscribing that reduces cognitive load for users and incorporates user-focused controls has the potential to improve trust in companies through efficient boundary controls over the marketing emails that they send. Thank you for your attention, and please feel free to reach out to the authors for questions.